sit. This is Milo. Well, actually, this is Milo's back. Milo, come here. He's such a handsome dog. You need some screen time, buddy. This is Milo, and this is Milo's roadmap to success. So basically, the first thing we talked about in the session, yes, you're a handsome fella, is exercise. As you can tell, he's all legs. Sit. That's passive training. We're not there yet. But look at the ears. I love the ears. Okay, so basically, your average dog is using hours worth of exercise a day. He's right now not getting a ton. The Guardians don't have a yard, and we're kind of out in the country, so I'm a little bit worried about coyotes. And I would recommend, if the Guardians can, to put in a privacy fence or a regular fence as opposed to invisible fence. Invisible fence puts dogs, like if you're at the edge of town, it puts the dog at an advantage because the wolf or whatever can come inside and he can't exit. Now, if he does get chased out and it buzzes him, it only buzzes for about 5 or 7 seconds. And once he figures out I can just endure the 5 or 7 seconds, they just run through it over and over again. Now, you can train a dog to stay in a boundary without using a visible fence. It does take practice. All right, so also the Guardians we're using a bark collar, and I recommend not doing that because he's articulating so that he disagrees with something. I don't want to chase the symptom. I want to take the root cause. I want him to no longer think his job is to be a protector, and that's some of the stuff we will talk about later in the session. But first of all, exercise. So basically, we went over the doggy Stairmaster, throwing the treats up and down the stairs. Go to the top of the stairs with the treats, or maybe just the first flight there. Throw the treat. You might have to move the little plant I noticed you at the bottom of the landing. Throw the treat down there. When he gets down there, call it like Cabo or Haiti, and then you call him back to the top of the stairs and give him another one. Call it Canada. So basically, going down and up is one repetition. With an empty stomach, keep on throwing those treats up and down, and keep at it and count each down up as 1, and keep doing it until he's like, you're crazy. I've been down there 127 times. I'm not going down there anymore. His number probably won't be that high, but it'll probably be, I'm guessing, about the 80 range, somewhere in there. And so the idea, and eventually you could do it, have him go all the way down. You could maybe throw it all the way down here. But the idea is now he's going up and down, which burns energy. He's running and with the stairs. And so I call this a doggy Stairmaster. So keep on doing it until to max out what his maximum number is. And then after that, you want to exercise about 50 to 75% of that maximum number multiple times a day. Let me see. We also talked about using the snuffle mat, feeding out of a treat, feeding out of a snuffle mat, feeding out of a treat dispensing toy. Scent games, Google scent games is something else you can do. If he likes to fetch is a wonderful way to do it. And walks are great. And I didn't touch on this because it's finally turning cold here. But when dogs are on a walk, most of the time we try to get back to the house. We think of the walking as the exercise. On a walk, actually, truth be told, the dogs burn more energy by sniffing on a walk than they do the locomotion of walking. So if you can, it's safe to do so. On walks, let him sniff as much as you can. Instead of thinking, I'm going to take a walk around the block, I'm going to walk in this direction for 15 minutes and turn around and walk for 15 minutes back if I have a half an hour. So that way he can do as much sniffing as he wants. If he starts pacing around the house, exercise him. If we're going to have a guest come over, like I talked about in the video above, exercise him ahead of time. They need exercise about every 2 to 4 hours. And he seems to be a higher energy dog now. He's in middle age, so he doesn't need as much as he used to. But I promise you, if you are ahead of the game, or if there's a certain time of the day we're having there's a certain time, or there's some construction going on, so there's a lot of trucks going by. There's probably certain times of the day where they're more likely to do it. Go ahead. Well, ask her how to do it.
Yeah, you could probably just look.
Okay. So basically, the idea is to get him to exercise before things happen that are going to be problematic for him, or before the trucks go, or whatever the case may be. Now, exercise is not going to fix the problems, but it'll make fixing the problems easier. We also talked about getting him a bunch of toys. Right now, he has a couple of toys. Dogs, when they're stressed, like to chew. Now, he grew up as a street dog, so he probably doesn't have a whole lot of he's not probably going to be as much into toys as other types of dogs are. But what I recommend you get is a water buffalo horn. Get it on Amazon. They're pretty expensive, and it'll smell funky for about a week or 2. But after that, it's a great thing for him to chew on and channel some of that frustration or energy there. But also, if he paces around the house, or if he's quote-unquote naughty, do the Stairmaster, play fetch, or whatever the case may be, the scent game. Be ahead of it. Okay, so what was it?
You did.
I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you were finishing up the exercise notes.
Okay, but exercising him ahead of time or before guests come over really sets him up for success. Okay, so the next thing we talked about are rules, and he doesn't really have a lot of rules. He doesn't get on the bed. I don't know if it's necessarily a rule or that's just kind of a habit that he got into. The guardians would prefer to not have him on the couch, and that's one of the rules we usually suggest. Now, these rules are in place for a limited period of time, but they should be minimum in place for 90 days because it takes 90 days to form a behavior pattern. And every time he is able to break the rule, it doesn't set you back all the way, but it sets you back quite a bit. So make sure that you're very strict about these rules for the first 2 months or so. And after a while, the dog kind of gets in a habit of doing it. And remember that breaking a rule is a horrible way to reward the dog. If you want to reward him, play tug of war with a rope. Rub his belly, pat him by his ears, the place he wants, give him a bully stick, take him for a walk. There's a lot of ways to do it, but rewarding a dog by breaking the rule makes the dog want to break that rule more. Now remember, anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're rewarding. So right here, come. I just rewarded him coming to me. That's passive training, which we're going to talk about in a bit. Now, dogs learn through repetition, consistency, and good timing. You have 3 seconds to correct reward the dog to have them to have the ability to make the connection. But it has to be repeated over and over and over again. Now, he's doing kind of laps right now, so it tells me he's a little bit agitated, or not necessarily agitated, but on alert, or just, so if you see him doing these loops, again, stares. Okay, so for rules, a lack of rules confuses dogs into thinking we are peers. And if the dog sees you as a peer, then listening to you is optional. It also means the dog's going to try to find a job for himself, and I think he's decided he's the guard dog. And so what we want to do is we want to give him other jobs, and we did that through passive training and petting improves, and I promise I'll get to that. But basically, for the rules, the first rule I suggested is not being allowed on the furniture. I would recommend the guardians get X mats, the letter X, M-A-T-S. They're about 11, 13 bucks a piece. You're probably going to need 5 of them for this room, 3 for the couch and 1 for each chair. And so that way you don't have to police him getting up on the couch. It doesn't feel good to lay on those, so he just will get out of it. Now, I would also get a dog bed. This would be the perfect place. I don't live here, but this is where I would recommend putting it. Now, they make these dog beds that are kind of like, they're not a fluffy dog bed, they're dog bed on basically legs. And so a lot of times it's PVC piping or plastic, and then it's almost like a hammock. It doesn't quite like a hammock, but it's a cloth in the middle of it. So he likes to hump his dog beds, and so the guardians have gotten rid of them. So if you get that, he can't really hump it or drag it around, but you can condition him to go there, and if you have Taylor come back, she can show you how to have the dog go there on command. But giving the dog a designated place to go is always an important thing when we take away the furniture. So the furniture is off limits for 90 days minimum, or as long as the problem's going on. And after that, if you decide you would like to let the dog in the furniture, it's with an invitation, it's for good behavior, it's not just a reward. Okay, other rules, door. If we're going to put up a baby gate on the stairs or anything else, or have any doors in the house, you do the same thing for I wouldn't have the guests do it, but you can do the same thing for the garage if you're letting him out. But the door here to go outside, go to the door, tell him to sit 1 time. If he doesn't sit, walk away and sit down in the area. Sit, make sure you're seated, because when you're seated, you look like you're no longer waiting. And if you stand there, you look like you're waiting for him. So sit down, ask your digital assistant to give you a 1-minute timer. After 1 minute, go back to the door and command him again to sit. He has 3 seconds to sit. If he doesn't sit this time, I'll walk away for 2 minutes. Next time, I'll walk away for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. But as soon as his butt hits the ground, fly that door open. Right now, he scratches the door as his way of getting out because his guardians go let him out when he scratches the door. So that's the communication that's been established. This will teach him to go sit at the door as his way of asking him to go in or out. Now, I started with whatever direction the dog really wants. If he wants to go out, start with him in, but eventually you want to do it both directions. And I also do it with the baby gate. If you use a kennel, same thing. The door to the kitchen or to the garage or whatever it is. Okay, so that's another rule. Another rule is that he should not be within 7 feet of anyone who's eating. That's a very, in the dog world, that's a way of challenging for things. So if the child is sitting here eating a snack and he comes right up here and he's sitting there, he's like coveting their food. And not saying no, remember, is almost the same thing as saying yes. So if he comes up, you can use those escalating consequences, either hiss or stand up or marching in between and put your butt to whoever has the food and march directly towards the dog until he's got to that 7-foot boundary. I showed you how to establish an invisible boundary in the kitchen. Practice that. Again, practice it when you're doing your meal prep. So microwave that piece of bacon, walk in the kitchen, turn and establish the line right away, walk backwards. And make sure when you're walking backwards, step, pause. Step, pause for about the first maybe 10 or 15 times you practice. Eventually you can kind of walk a little bit more steps in a row and you can move your torso away from facing him. But at first be very militant about it. And watch him out of the corner of your eye when you're doing your meal prep. And you can also do the same thing in the dining room. So maybe we microwave a piece of roast beef. Everybody sits down where we normally sit, and we cut that roast beef, and it smells like we're eating. It has all of the, we're in the place where we eat, but as soon as I cross that line, they come in and correct me. Now, I recommend usually putting painter's tape down. If you're going to use painter's tape, and I'm going to sit normally or I'm not going to be able to stand for the rest of the weekend. So when you use painter's tape, you'll have a roll like this. Take an X-Acto knife and don't cut all the way through, but cut through it part of the way. And so what you can do is when you put the painter's tape down, after a week, you can take it makes little dashes. You can peel off a little section. Now it's a dash line. And then every week we take the middle one out until eventually it disappears, but he knows where the boundary is. Now right here, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but there's a kind of a carpeted area. If somebody's eating a snack here, maybe he shouldn't be allowed on the carpet. If we're in the dining room, he's not allowed to cross the threshold, but he's allowed to go in the dining room every other time, or in the kitchen every other time. So the idea is to come up with these boundaries so we can help him practice self-restraint, but also help the humans practice enforcing those boundaries, which helps them look more like a leader. The more that the guardians enforce rules and boundaries, the more that he sees that they have the leadership situation under control, and then it's easier to come for him to kind of relax about it. The people are coming in the door and all the rest of that stuff. Okay, let me see. If you are going out the door with him, make sure that you go through the door first. But if you're just letting him through the door, you don't have to go through the door first. And there are probably other rules that you can incorporate. If you're going to take him out for a walk, you're going to put his collar on to take him out for a ride somewhere, tell him to sit. Only when he sits do you pick up the collar and put it on him. So you're creating a motivation for him to want to do those things. We also talked about passive training. Passive training is what I showed you earlier. Every time he came by, I petted him and said, come. So a lot of times when we give a dog a command, it represents the end of fun. He's outside barking and having a great time yelling at the squirrel. I ask him to come because I don't want the neighbors to hear it. Well, then I come inside and then the door closes and I can't go out and yell at the squirrel anymore. Listening to you represents the end of fun, and next time I'm not going to listen to you. Well, passive training bypasses all that. Same thing parents do with kids. Every time the kid shares, you make a big deal out of it. First time the kid uses the bathroom when you're potty training, you make a big deal out of that. Same thing for the dog. Most of us, remember, train our dogs to do the wrong thing. The dog comes to you, we ignore it. It sits in front of you, ignores it. It lays down in front of you, ignores it. But it scratches the door, you immediately go and open the door. It barks, we tell it to no. Remember, good attention and bad attention is pretty much the same thing. So for passive training, what we're doing is we're spotlighting and rewarding the things that he likes. I like to say that we're celebrating those things. So that's a watchword we use. So if I'm sitting here and one of the guardians sees that he came up and sat in front of me and I wasn't paying attention, they say celebrate. I look at the dog and I narrate whatever the word of whatever he did. If he's standing there, I assume he came, I pet him and say come. And remember, pet under the chin whenever possible. If he's sitting, I pet him and say sit. If he's laying down, pet him and say crash, or whatever the word is you want. So after a while, he's like just coming with a human. They pet me and say come, and then I can do everything I want. 1% of the time, maybe it might represent the end of fun, but the rest of the time, it's fun. And since we're not telling him he's willing to do it, not only is he not willing to do it, we're just rewarding him when he does it on his own. So that's the absolute easiest way to train a dog. Come. All it takes is a little bit of observation. Now remember, like I said, pet under the chin, don't pet over the head. But you can pet him anywhere you want, just don't pet over the head. Okay, petting with a purpose is the flip side of that coin. Petting with passive training is when the dog organically offers the behavior without any influence from you whatsoever. Come, like that. Petting with a purpose is if he came up and nudged me, all right, sit, sit. Well, I normally wouldn't say it multiple times. Let's say he comes up and paws at me or nudges me, he's telling me what to do. Leaders tell, followers ask. So if he tells me what to do and I pet him, then I'm telling him, yeah, you're my boss. So next time he gives you an order, I want you to give him a counter order. Tell him to sit. If he's already sitting, ask him to sit over here, or better not ask him, tell him to lay down. If he lays down within 3 seconds, pet him under his chin and say just the command. Remember, they hear the first word you say. So he sits, pet him and say sit. And pet him as much or as little as you want. But if what he's going to realize is when I tell the humans what to do now, nothing happens. But if they tell me what to do and I do it, I get rewarded. So now I am now motivated to want to do what the humans want. And I recognize I can't tell them anymore. I have to ask, and better than ask, I have to prepay for the privilege of their attention. And he will start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for that pet. When he does, you bet your butt you better start petting him within that 3-second window. Pet him as much or as little as you want. Otherwise, you go back to nudging you or whatever the case may be. So now he knows what it is that you want, and you're showing him through your actions what you want. And dogs want to please us. We just do a really poor job of communicating what they can do to please us. So after a while, this is a great way to get him to do it. Now, I was telling this to a woman in Santa Monica, and her dog was sitting next to her on the couch, and she was petting the dog. She goes, well, I have a question for you. Like, I'm going to ask you, I say, okay, but I'm going to ask you to stop petting your dog real quick. She goes, okay, but what if I just want to pet the dog? I like petting dogs that make me feel good. You're petting your dog, I'm sorry. 3 times in a 15-second window of her intending not to pet her dog, she involuntarily reached over. So I have a watchword for this one. I call it paycheck. So if somebody comes to the room and sees that I'm petting the dog and he's standing, they might suspect that I forgot. Even if I did it right, and they say paycheck, I stop petting. Tell the dog to sit. When it sits, I pet it on the chin, say sit, and I turn to tell the person. I actually asked him to sit. When you flushed the toilet, he stood up and I continued petting. But thank you, because I do forget to pet without a purpose. You don't have to thank them, but it's not a gotcha. It's just a reminder to help you get out of a habit of doing it. But if you pet your dog, remember, anything your dog's doing when you pet it is what you're going to amplify. Excited is one of the most common ones, but if the trucks have been coming by and you pet the dog and say, it's okay, and every time I hear it's okay is when I'm getting petted when the truck comes by, that means that you want me to growl and bark at the truck. So instead, we'd rather distract him, and I'd rather have you be ahead of the curve in terms of exercising him ahead of time so that we deplete that excess energy before he even is reactive in the first place. Now, we also went over the escalating consequences, and I'm not going to go over those on the video, but if you have any questions about those, let me know. But pick and choose your battles. Create situations where you can help the dog practice. If you're going to have a big dinner, for the week before that, make sure you're eating in there and you're establishing that invisible boundary. You can also make sure you practice that out command. And I do it with every doorway in the house, every area. If it's a rug, you have to practice with dogs. They don't generalize. You have to practice in a lot of different situations. So toss the treat out this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, that way. Come. And eventually the dog knows what it is you want. And then you can throw the treat in the room as well and say kitchen, dining, media, living, whatever it is. Let me think. What else? Taylor went over the leave it exercise with you. I usually like to practice that with about 10 or 12 treats each time. Now remember, the progression is at first the first progression is holding it in your hand, but you probably shouldn't have to do that. You want to do that until you hold out the hand, he doesn't even touch it, and he knows I'm never going to get that. So that's the first stage. And you probably only have to do that for a day or two. Probably might not even have to do that at all. Second stage is you're going to drop it and you're going to collapse right on top of it. Third stage is you're going to drop and cage. Fourth stage is you drop and hover. And when you drop, make sure you drop from this distance. If you drop from here, you have no idea where it's going to go. So drop it from here and you hover. And at first, all he has to do is back off, but he did it so well, I like you to wait for, at first couple times, let him do it until as soon as he backs off. But eventually, make sure he looks up at you. Then you treat him for your other hand, and then you pick up the item. He never, ever, ever gets the item on the floor. Once he is established, and practice this in a whole bunch of different places, then if I'm one of the kids eating some applesauce, he starts walking towards me, you can say, leave it. And now he should turn around and walk away. Now, one thing that he does that's really awesome is when the kids are approaching him and he has a bully stick or something, he immediately gets up on his own when they get too close and walks away. That's something we should absolutely celebrate. We should come up with a command word. Like Monty Python, say, run away, or whatever it is you want to say, but we want to classify that. So that way, if let's say the kid, let's say he has a high value item and maybe it's another kid that comes and visits. These kids, I don't think he would do anything, but there's another kid and it walks up to him, that might become a bite. So so let's say the kid starts walking towards him and he starts curling up his lips or growling. We should never, ever punish or correct a dog for growling or baring its teeth. That's a warning. It says, I don't like what you're doing. The best thing to do is increase the distance. Since he already runs away from the kids when they approach him, if you label that, then another kid starts walking towards him and you say, flee, and he moves away on his own. That's a wonderful thing to do, and so I would celebrate that one for sure, because I'm guessing that the kids this age, there are going to be other kids that are going to be coming over, and all it takes is for one person to have their head turned to the side for a minute, and the kid waddles over and gets too close to the dog. To be within about 5 to 7 feet is a way of challenging for items. If he has a high value item, it's very likely that, well, not very likely, it's possible. I don't see anything from him that I'd be concerned about, but I'm only seeing a snapshot of his behavior. So it's better to practice and not ever need the command than need the command and not have it available to you. Okay, come, Milo, come here, buddy, sit. Can you sit? I shouldn't ask. Oh, the drop command, we just dropped. So normally I would give him a treat and say, drop. I happen to be pretty much out of treats. I have one more, so we're gonna turn him around. All right, so this is Milo, sit. sit. Remember, treat in the mouth first, command word after. And remember, not baby talk or always baby talk, just be consistent. Well, this is Milo, and this is Milo's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.